So I do expect that Indonesia will be receiving more vaccine donations from the United States. The number that people often cite is actually much lower than the reality. The U.S. contribution to the vaccine efforts globally and in Indonesia is actually much larger than what is often cited. No, thanks very much for doing the interview. It's a great opportunity for me to share my perspective after I've just passed my 1-year mark. First of all, it's really exciting to be serving as the U.S. ambassador to this great country. We have a wonderful relationship, and I think in all aspects the relationship is moving in the right direction. As you noted, I mean, there's of course room for growth, and I think that makes it more exciting. We have a very strong military partnership, and that partnership helps our two countries contribute to regional peace and stability in this very dynamic Indo-Pacific region. We have a strong economic partnership as well, but I think there is great room for growth, tremendous potential to increase both trade and investment flows to both countries. We have a strong history of people-to-people ties and strong educational ties, which we hope to improve as well. And then there's very important areas of cooperation, things that matter the most to not just our two countries, but to the region and beyond, working together on the pandemic and of course the climate. So many exciting aspects to the relationship, and I think the fact that our two leaders had a very substantive and productive meeting just this week speaks volumes about the state of the relationship. Well, so I'm convinced that this is a very important, very positive initiative that will actually enhance our ability to work with key countries like Indonesia to promote regional peace, stability, and prosperity. Australia has been a very responsible country. They have a perfect record on proliferation, on commitment to non-proliferation has always been very, very strong. So I have no concerns that this will somehow lead to proliferation or an arms race in the region. I really do think it's going to contribute greatly to us working with ASEAN to promote ASEAN outlook on Indo-Pacific, and of course with full respect to ASEAN centrality. So I think it's a very exciting initiative, and I think it's a win-win for all of us. Yeah, no, I'm very excited that we were able to conduct this very large-scale exercise, Garuda Shield, with thousands of young troops from both countries participating. It was a very productive effort, and I think such efforts really will enhance our military partnership's ability to contribute to the regional security dynamics. One obvious area is working together to deal with humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. As you know, this region is prone to many natural disasters, unfortunately, and the U.S. military has contributed greatly to dealing with some of those major disasters. And so I think the fact that our two militaries work together to sort of fine-tune their skills and build capabilities is a very important contribution to the regional peace and stability. We very much view Indonesia as a leader in Southeast Asia. And in fact, we have great respect for how Indonesia has stood up to protect its maritime rights against those who don't actually respect international laws and rules and practices. So we are actually delighted to be working with Indonesia so that they can build more capabilities to be more effective in defending against those who attempt to violate Indonesia's maritime rights. But there are many more ways in which Indonesia is and will continue to play a leadership role in ASEAN, and that's why we're so proud to be partnering with Indonesia in so many important efforts.
Can you explain more about any of this?
So, for example, I think we all agree that the coup in Burma earlier this year was a terrible development for not just Burma's democratic transition, and I have great deal of sympathy for the poor people of Burma who are suffering under the military coup. But it was a bad development for the region, right? This is a region that has been very successful, stable, peaceful, prosperous. And so developments like that are not helpful to the entire region. And that's why we applaud Indonesia. Both President Jokowi and Foreign Minister Retno have spoken out very strongly against the coup and have called for restoration of democracy in Burma. So that's a wonderful example of how Indonesia is stepping up to its leadership role and really making a difference in regional affairs. Well, first of all, I have to correct your record. So the U.S. has been the largest contributor to COVAX, the international effort to distribute vaccines globally. We have pledged $4 billion, much larger than any other country, including China. We have provided Indonesia bilaterally over 13 million doses of Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, which I think are internationally recognized as the most effective vaccines against the pandemic. We have also purchased over 1 billion doses of Pfizer vaccines to be donated internationally to developing countries. So I do expect that Indonesia will be receiving more vaccine donations from the United States. Indonesia has also, given its means, has purchased U.S. vaccines as well. So the number that people often cite is actually much lower than the reality. The U.S. contribution to the vaccine efforts globally and in Indonesia is actually much larger than what is often cited. So I do expect that we will continue to work closely with Indonesia to fight the pandemic. Should also note that fighting against the pandemic is more than just vaccines, although I do think vaccine is probably the most important part of the fight against the pandemic. The U.S. has donated over 1,000 ventilators, very well-made ventilators, which are being used in hundreds of hospitals across Indonesia. Finally, I think perhaps more importantly, when you look at long-term perspective, is that the U.S. has a long history of healthcare-related support and cooperation with Indonesia. USAID, U.S. Agency for International Development, has worked with Indonesian entities for decades now. I believe the total amount of money that has gone into those efforts is something like $1 billion US. It's a lot of effort, a lot of money, a very robust program, and that will continue. And those long-term programs helps build local capacity and capabilities, so that when the next pandemic hits, Indonesian nurses, doctors, medical technicians will all be much better prepared to dealing with diseases and pandemics that may come its way in the future. So I think in all those ways, we have a very strong cooperation in medicine and healthcare, and I expect that will continue. Well, I look at the numbers, and the efficacy rate of our vaccines are much higher than any other vaccines, including Chinese vaccines. So I think it actually means that we are providing much stronger protection against the COVID-19 pandemic virus than any other vaccines around. So maybe it took a little bit longer, but I suspect more Indonesians are, I think, more comfortable with waiting a little bit longer to get the best vaccine into their bodies than to take the earliest possible vaccine that came their way.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know who you're talking to, but every Indonesian I talk to is very excited about the possibility of getting Moderna, Pfizer, or Johnson & Johnson vaccines. In fact, quite a few of my Indonesian friends may have gotten other vaccines earlier, but they're choosing to get
Wait.
get more U.S. vaccines. So thank you for raising this, because we had the COP26 this week. I think many leaders have already said this, but I really do think this is the decade for action. I mean, we cannot afford to wait much longer to take serious action towards getting the climate situation under control. And this is a strong area of cooperation between the United States and Indonesia. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, former Secretary Kerry, has been deeply engaged with his Indonesian counterparts, including Minister Luhut, Minister Siti, and others, to strengthen our cooperation. In fact, this was a prominent topic in the meeting between President Biden and President Jokowi earlier this week as well. So we applaud Indonesia's efforts so far. We believe there is more we can do together, and look forward to continuing to support Indonesia in this effort. I should also mention that the Development Finance Corporation, as well as the USAID, are also involved in this effort, and they're supporting projects related to renewable energy, and those investments will add up to being hundreds of millions of dollars going forward. So this is an area that I really want to focus on during my time in Indonesia. I do think there is tremendous potential for growth in this area, and I do hope that more and more U.S. companies will look to Indonesia as destination for investment. But as you know, there are some issues, sort of regulatory inconsistencies, some implementation issues, and there are some hurdles that need to be overcome. But I'm quite optimistic that our two countries will be able to work out some issues, and that the potential is very bright. The prospects are very bright for investment. Well, I know that, of course, healthcare is a very important area for Indonesia, for everybody. I think the pandemic has reminded all of us of the need to really invest in healthcare sectors. So that would be one area. But I think really potential is limitless in terms of what might be possible. This is a huge country, huge market, with a very young, dynamic population. I really do hope that more and more U.S. companies will come this way. I should mention that in terms of issues that may make things a bit difficult for U.S. or other foreign companies, is that we do have this very important process called the Trade and Investment Framework Agreement talks. And I believe later this year we'll be having a round of these talks. I should note that for the first time in many years, these talks will be held at the ministerial level, which I think indicates the interest and commitment of both countries to expand our economic partnership. So I'm looking forward to those talks taking place sometime later this year. It basically means I have to work very long hours every day. No, I think when the President and Secretary of State decided to give me the two responsibilities, I mean, they recognize that I have a long history of working on Asian issues. I mean, like 30 years of diplomacy in Asia. I mean, I've served in many different countries in Northeast Asia as well as Southeast Asia. As you may know, I served as U.S. Ambassador to Korea and to the Philippines before coming to Indonesia. So I think given my broad and deep Asia experience, and given that I also have, I think, quite a few years of working on the Korean Peninsula issues, including the North Korean nuclear program, so I think they decided that I was the right person to be handling both issues, both very important responsibilities at the same time. Well, I mean, we have always supported meaningful and productive engagement between the two Koreas. In fact, President Biden said this very explicitly when President Moon visited Washington May of this year. And we will continue to support strong North-South engagement and programs. But it really is up to the two Koreas. We cannot dictate how the two Koreas interact, and we hope that there will be some positive movement. I mean, we also hope that we will be able to make progress towards denuclearization, which remains a priority goal for many countries in the region, including those that are most directly affected, including South Korea.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador.
All
That's
right.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you.